the industries, and the ones who owned the industry made maximum profit. That was what colonialism was. The farmers did not make much.
Yes, yes,
And
yes.
this is what capitalism is. This is what they wanted to prevent by making a socialistic economy.
Assalamu alaikum, bro.
Salam, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Alhamdulillah.
So we are back again after a week. So regarding our previous video, I think we lacked clarity in the sense that we talked about a lot of things, and we never focused on a particular topic. So
Yeah, I think we should give a bit more context to what we are talking,
yeah,
and keep this video more focused to a topic.
yes,
And I think we mentioned a lot of things about our country, India, and we have to explain a bit more what we mean when we mention that. So, what comes to your mind when I mention the Indian civilization?
um, you mean
Like the ancient India.
okay? Uh, when you say ancient India, the thing that first comes to my mind is the diversity of the culture it had. I mean, obviously there were millions of people, but the thing is that they spoke. People had their own languages. They had their own faiths. I mean, religion. Uh, they had their own gods. I mean, basically everyone had their own way of living.
Yeah, I think like historians describe ancient India as a land of 1,000 gods and traditions. But I think the core of the spirituality that existed in the subcontinent was that the physical thing that was used to connect with the metaphysical world was something subjective. Like for example, if you take the weapon that you would use, which would give you a sense of protection, this weapon is used to connect with the ultimate protector. So
Okay.
it was in that sense. But then also a lot of myths and stories developed later on in order to connect with the spiritual world. You could also say it was a land of pilgrimages, because exploring the unknown, getting to know the unknown was actually a means of connecting with the spiritual world. This is what actually drove knowledge production in ancient India, because traveling to the forest or making journeys like into unknown destinations, and also thinking about, like, philosophically thinking, also looking at the skies and studying the motion of the planets and the stars, were all a huge part of this tradition, and these ideas that originated in India, the science of astronomy, etc., like spread to different parts of the world via trade.
Yeah, spreading regarding that spreading to different part of the world and that trade part, I think it has played a significant role. I mean, trade, in the sense that basically back then India was a primary producer, which naturally meant that we attracted traders from all over the world. So I think that has also facilitated, like you mentioned, the spreading of ideas and knowledge.
I remember this reading about a Roman minister who was concerned about this trade deficit with India,
Okay.
because they had huge requirements for the Indian spices and other agricultural products, and they bought this using gold. So he was concerned this flow of gold would actually harm the Roman economy.
I mean, not just the flow of gold into India. I mean, it was not just gold that trade brought into India. Rather, this religious ideologies also.
Yeah.
I think trade has played a major role in that. I mean, the other day you were saying about Buddhism. It was
Yeah. So
just,
yeah, there was huge influx of ideologies, like.
but the outflux also is there,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So Buddhism actually originated in India and spread to different parts of the world. While other, if you're talking about major religions, other major religions like Christianity and Islam came in. I think Christianity came in during the first century of the Common Era, and Islam in the 8th century. But these were not viewed as something entirely different in the initial
Yeah,
periods.
that's an interesting concept, and I have read about this. I mean, in his book, Why Am I Hindu? Shashi Tharoor mentions this concept. I mean, a certain group of Jews had migrated to India, and they were performing their rituals, and the natives thought that it was part of them because they knew there were millions of gods and millions of rituals, and they knew that it was not humanly possible to know all of them. So they thought it was part of them. It was not viewed as something alien
Yeah, exactly.
or something like that.
Initially, when Christianity came in, also, I mean, as I mentioned, the object was like completely subjective. So you using a cross to connect with the spiritual world, like how it appears from outside. It's not something alien. Also, monotheism was not something alien because it is one of the, I mean, most explicitly mentioned traditions in the Vedas.
Okay.
So monotheism was practiced by various people, sannyasis and monks, in their own ways. But so when Islam came in, it was only one of the systems of monotheism.
Okay.
So, anyways, why we are actually talking about this India as a civilization is because there is this tension of how India was as a civilization and then its evolution as a nation state.
Yeah.
And this tension, like different people had different visions of how the values of our civilization will be represented in our nation state.
Yes, exactly.
And this
This play,
conflict
yeah,
has brought a lot of problems in the Indian
I think this
politics.
played a major role in, uh, you know, when we got independence.
Yeah.
Like this decision, this particular decision, like how will India proceed?
Exactly, like
That
how
was
what will be the values our constitution will be upholding. Basically, there were two major ways that people were advocating.
okay.
One is that of the mainstream basically of the Congress of Gandhiji and Ambedkar, who were adamant on the fact that India has to preserve the values of its multiculturalism and
Yes,
secularism
yes,
and its inclusiveness.
yeah, basically.
And then there was an ideology, I mean, not an ideology, basically a concept that secularism was not needed basically because
Okay.
India is inherently accepting of different traditions. But the flaw was that the ones who were advocating for this were not had a different concept.
Like,
I think Savarkar was one who inspired the line of thought, but even though it was not in his lifetime that these organizations gained prominence.
okay, he's the founder of RSS, right?
No, he's not the founder of RSS. He's the maybe the ideological father, or you could say something like that.
Okay.
Like the ones who founded RSS were inspired by Savarkar's ideas.
Okay.
But in his lifetime, he had nothing to do with the RSS. In fact, during the end of his life, like he was accused of being the godfather to Godse, who killed Gandhiji, and so no one wanted anything to do with him.
Okay.
But after that, I think the RSS was basically founded on the ideas that Savarkar was advocating. Because the problem with this idea was, like from the outside when you see, yes, like the Hindu culture of India is actually accepting of other traditions, there was no problem. But the thing is, Savarkar himself was not a Hindu. Anyone who studies his life knows that he is actually, Mr. Wolf describes him as a strategic agnostic.
Okay.
So his concept was to use the Hindu myths to form a central idea of a nation.
Okay.
That of So that everyone would have a common myth they would agree to, that would form the basis of a nation. And this was similar to, he himself says, that of Germany and Italy at that time, which were ruled by fascist regimes
Okay.
in like Nazis.
Yeah.
And he also said that it was the problem of the Jews, they could not identify with the Germans in Germany.
Okay, so I mean, regarding this, excerpt I read from one of Goldwalker's book. In that he mentions India is not a place; it's the people. I mean, unless and until everyone believes in a common thing, I mean, you know, it cannot be pure India. To be a pure India, everyone has to believe the same. Everyone has to have the same ideologies. Everyone has to have the same ethical ideas and stuff like that. I
Yeah.
mean, just because you are on this side of the border doesn't mean you are an Indian. That's what basically
Yes, exactly.
he's
So
trying to say.
basic idea was that this myth that everyone has to agree was related to Ram, like Sri Ram. Like he did not relate it to gods like Shiva or Vishnu. He basically codified the religion into a political strategy.
Okay.
That is what he did. The political strategy was for people to identify with these heroes of ancient India, so that they derive their identity from these stories. What he himself says is that the atheists or the agnostics or the Sikhs and the Buddhists and the Jains of India can be in a way can in a way relate to this, even in this myths. It won't be, they won't have to resist accepting these heroes, but it would be a problem for the Muslims and the Christians. So what he actually does is he equates the Muslims and the Christians to the Jews of Germany at that time.
Okay.
Okay, so he basically views them as a problem, as a
Yeah.
so what he's basically doing is he's othering a community.
Yes. Yes.
And what Ambedkar and Gandhiji they were saying is like, this is not what our culture was. This is not what our
Yes,
civilization
exactly.
is, because we have an inclusive
Nature,
yeah.
and that's what post independence. If you take a look at how India has been performing, we have bounced back in all the field that was taken away from us. I mean, you know, technologically, economically, we have bounced back. I mean, we have made a lot of progress in, you
Yeah,
know,
I think when the before colonialism and after colonialism, if we compare, and then the bounds that India is making is
yes,
huge.
it's huge. I mean, you know, ISRO. That's something we can be
Yeah,
truly
in
proud
fact,
about.
I think before colonialism, India was contributing around 33% to
Yes,
the
yes.
global economy, and after colonialism, like it
It
was
reduced to 3 or 0.3%. I'm not.
exactly. So also our goods are primary. Even though at the end of the colonial period, there was some industries like steel, no, not steel, like cement and sugar,
Yeah.
like very few, but still, it was starting in India. But then we picked up like big time
Yeah,
after independence.
and we were marveling at IT sector, in service sector,
Yeah, exactly.
mainly.
But
Then,
I think all this was made possible by the India that was envisioned by the our founding fathers, that is Gandhiji and Ambedkar,
yeah,
and not the other side of the spectrum. And I don't think it would
yeah,
have been
because they
possible.
never focused on. I mean, they never measured progress in terms of who believed what.
Yeah.
That's the main difference from now, and it's totally, we cannot agree that everything great in India happened in the last 6 years or something, or everything great about India happened in, after 2014.
No, that's
That's
the
not.
narrative that the
Yeah,
ruling
that
party is
yeah that
pushing forward.
I don't see any logic to that.
Like, I mean, we were nothing. There were large famines. I mean, the population was totally illiterate. They did not have, the basic
Yeah, food.
amenities.
And food.
Food, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
When they
food.
do not have food, how can you worry about toilets?
Yeah, exactly. That's one of the things they are saying. I mean, Congress. I mean, our Congress ruled India for 70 years, and there are no proper toilets. I mean, that was not what the government of that time was focused on. First, we had to have food. So they were, and they managed to achieve that also. They reduced poverty line, and they
Yeah.
reduced. I mean, they managed to get food to everyone. I mean, and another thing is that at that time we did not have enough steel to, you know,
Hmm.
produce this. I mean, it was a luxury building toilets back then. I mean, if you come to
Yeah.
think of it.
So, anyways, I think ideologically and in many other aspects, we as a nation are going away from the values
Yes.
that we upheld as a civilization. The first thing is, as we mentioned, that of the inclusive nature. I think the second thing is where we are economically, like, so the economic strategy that our founding fathers wanted to focus on was of a socialistic nature, not communist, not capitalist, but basically in the center. And they actually viewed capitalism as a colonial economy.
Yeah.
And then this was
Based on
because,
our
yeah,
experience.
because the industries and the ones who owned the industry made maximum profit. That was what colonialism was. The farmers did not make much.
Yes. Yes.
And
Yes.
this is what capitalism is. This is what they wanted to prevent by making a socialistic economy, because they understood capitalism equal to colonialism basically. So, and now we are moving
We are
more.
going back to that. I
Exactly.
mean, there is a rise in crony capitalism and stuff like
Yeah,
that. And
our government is selling all our public assets, public companies. There is increased privatization. We are going into basically a corporate colonialism.
yes,
We are
yes,
going back to that now.
going back to that now, and the gap between the top line and the bottom line in terms
Exactly,
of
it's increasing.
it's widening. I mean, it's a global phenomenon as well.
Yeah, I think so. In every way, we should take India back to what our founding fathers envisioned.